Hello everyone, long time no record. Today I'm going to be talking about amai. If you are a beginner level Japanese learner, you might know already that amai means sweet, but it can mean so many other things, and we're going to be looking into all of the little nuances of amai today. So as always, if you want a more in-depth and accurate look at what a Japanese word or phrase means, it's best to look it up in a monolingual dictionary, not bilingual. So Japanese to Japanese dictionary, not Japanese to English. I looked up amai on weblio.jp, very basic Japanese online dictionary. And I'm just going to go through all of the different definitions. There are 8 definitions, and some of them have some sub-definitions in them. So there's really more like close to 20 definitions of amai in here. And throughout, I'm going to do some example sentences as given in this Japanese to Japanese dictionary on how to use amai in sentences. And at the very end, I'm going to go over a few real-world examples where I have encountered amai in things that I translate professionally, and the various different ways I have translated it that is not sweet. So the very first definition of amai is what you might expect. Sato ya mitsu no yona aji de aru. So sweet flavor like sugar or honey, or nectar or honey. And then the example sentence they gave is achi no mitsu wa nigai zo, kochi no mitsu wa amai zo. So that water is bitter, but this water is amai, and in this case it's just simply sweet. Definition number 2. Shioke ga sukunai, karakunai. So lacking in saltiness, and it is not spicy. So this is sort of like the absence of things or the opposite of things. And their example sentence here is ajitsuke ga ikubun amakatta you da. So like the seasoning was rather amakatta, so past tense of amai, it was rather amai. And in this case, it's not exactly sweet, but rather mild. So that karakunai, that not spicy bit, we would usually say it is mild, not sweet. You may have noticed this if you have ever bought a kare mix, like curry, Japanese curry mix. It'll often say like karakuchi or amakuchi or amai. In this case, amai does not literally mean sweet, although Japanese curry I feel is kind of sweet at times. It really just means mild, not spicy. Alright, definition number 3. Kuchi atari ga odayaka de shigeki ga sukunai. So it's like mild in taste and not very stimulating. This is also more just like eating things. All of these definitions so far that we've looked at are like flavor related, like when you're eating something. Sake no aji nado ni yu. So it's like, it's often used when you're talking about alcohol and wine and stuff. So the sample sentence they gave here is just amai wine. So amai wine, sweet wine. In English we do say sweet, sweet wine or dry wine when we're describing the wines. But also mild kind of works, for this definition. Not if you're going to be talking specifically about wine, like we have our very set terms of sweet and dry, but it also kind of has that like mild nuance to it. All right, so definition 4, this is where things get interesting. We have a lot of sub-definitions in here too. It says, for sensations besides flavor. So we're finally departing from food. Oh, so sad. Sub-definition for A. Mitsu no yona nioi ga suru. It's like it has a smell like nectar, like flower nectar, or honey, you could say. And then their sample sentence is kousui no amai kaori. So the amai scent of perfume. So in this case, you could say sweet, right? Like the sweet scent of flowers. That is something you would say in English. But I think floral kind of goes with this nuance a little bit better. If it goes with that, it has a smell like nectar. Where does nectar come for? Flowers. So I think floral is actually a pretty good translation of amai in this sort of context. Here's another one, E, so B, 4B. This is going to be very different from everything we've gone over so far. Hanashiburi ga takumi de hito wo taburakasu sama. So it is an artful manner of speech that tricks people, basically. Skilled, crafty, umai. And then their sample sentence here is amai kotoba de sasou. If you've read shoujo manga or if you've listened to any J-pop, like you have probably come up with at the very least amai kotoba. I have heard amai kotoba and seen amai kotoba show up so much in romance and in other, stuff of that ilk that I have translated or just enjoyed and consumed as a person. Sasou is also a very like, ooh, to lure, to entice. So amai kotoba de sasou is like to lure or to entice somebody with amai words. Now you could, if you wanted to be poetic, you could still say like sweet words, sweet little nothings, sweet little lies almost. You could kind of go in that direction depending on the context. But that's going to be a little more poetic and a little more metaphorical. What we're really getting at here with amai in this particular context is silver-tongued, or slick, or persuasive, or flattering, depending on how you're using it, or alluring, or bewitching. So I really like amai in this context. It's kind of like deceptively sweet in this case, because you're trying to convince somebody to do something for you or something in that regard. Okay, so this is definition 4C, or 4U. Kokochiyoku uttori saseru sama. So, like, to enchant somebody, to make somebody, to lull somebody into a sense of, like, cozy sleepiness, sort of, is what this means. The sample sentence is, amai koe de sasayaku. Amai koe. I've heard this phrase a lot, usually in song lyrics, or shoujo manga, or, poetic, romantic stuff. There are other sample sentences, amai masku no otoko. So, amai koe de sasayaku is like whisper in an amai voice. Or amai masku no otoko, a man with an amai musk, like a musky scent. I'm gonna check to see if my camera's still recording. It randomly stops recording sometimes, which is really cool. And it's mirrorless, so there's no viewfinder, so I can't see if it has stopped recording. I'm gonna have to like research a little better next time I buy a new camera, God forbid. Okay, so back to this. So amai in this case, again, it's kind of in that realm of more like bewitching or tricking somebody, but a little more on the romantic, sensual, sexual side of things, with alluring or enchanting or intoxicating, or soft. You can also say, to whisper in a soft voice, in an intoxicating voice, in an enchanting voice. A man with a soft musk, amai masku, a man with an intoxicating musk. And we're gonna come back to soft later with amai, because I think as a translator or as a language learner or understander, it can be very useful to have like your default translation that you think of for words and phrases. And a lot of people's default translation for amai is going to be sweet, which is, that's pretty apt. I think sweet does kind of work as a default translation to kind of get you to understand what you're looking at. But I also think that soft is a pretty good default translation for amai. You'll find that soft works in most contexts. It's usually not the best translation for it, but like, it usually works pretty well. Okay, so now this is definition 4E, or 4D. This one is really into romantic territory. Koibito ya fufu ga nakayoku shiawase sou na sama. So it's like lovers or spouses sharing a happy, like, harmonious life or bonded life together. And then their sample phrase is amai shinkon seikatsu, which is like an amai newlywed life. So in this case, I added, in addition to cozy and romantic, idyllic, paints a romantic picture. Like, amai shinkon seikatsu, you wouldn't necessarily say sweet newlywed life. Again, if you said sweet in this case, it would be more metaphorical and more poetic. So it's not even necessarily wrong to translate amai shinkon seikatsu as sweet newlywed life. It's just not exactly what it's really more like romantic or cozy or idyllic. And now we're on to the fifth subdefinition of 4. So 4O or 4E. Fashion でリボンやフリル、パステルカラーなどを用いて少女風の可愛らしさを強調している様. That's a long sentence. So basically, a lot of katakana too. To emphasize a girlish cuteness and charm through fashion, such as like using ribbons, frills, pastel colors, etc. So their sample sentence is very basic. Amai fuku wo kikonasu. So to wear amai clothes. So in this case, you really would not want to say sweet clothes. People wouldn't really know what you're talking about if you say, oh, I'm wearing sweet clothes. You will be like, what, is it edible? Like you could say, oh, that dress is so sweet. Although, in English, my mind, if somebody said, oh wow, sweet dress, my mind would think more like sweet as in like, oh dude, sweet dress. Like it would think slang rather than what this really is, which is cute, girlish, or precious. All right, so those are all the definitions of 4. And I think that particular definition really shows the scope of amai pretty well. But 5 also does. So 5, once again, we are straying from flavors. So 5 has 3 subsections. The first one is 厳しさに欠けている様。また、くみしやすい様。So lacking in harshness or like easy to deal with. And then their sample sentence is 子供に甘い親. Parents that are amai on their children. Or another sample sentence, 相手を甘く見たのが誤りだ. Perceiving his opponent amaili, in an amai way, was a mistake. So this definition is often translated as naive, and I think a lot of you guys watching this video, like if you're beginner level Japanese even, you might know that amai can mean naive, especially if you watch a lot of anime, and like sometimes a character will say something and then another character will say amai na, kind of in a taunting way, like, that's so naive of you. Naive really gets to the heart of what it means, although it's not always necessarily the best way to translate it. Like, I don't know, I usually don't be like, oh, that's so naive. Usually we'll say something like, oh, that's so childish. Like, that's usually what we'll say instead of naive. But yeah, parents that are amai on their children, this is again where soft can come into play. Like, you're too soft on him, you need to toughen him up, kind of thing. And then the second one, perceiving his opponent amai li was a mistake. 相手を甘く見たのが誤りだ. That's kind of more like gullible or naive. You could also kind of say soft, like you were soft-minded or too tender-hearted even. You could kind of go in that direction. So that was one of the definitions under definition 5. So 5b, 評価の基準が厳格でない. Big words. So to lack strictness when you're evaluating something. And this sample sentence will clarify what that exactly means. Amai saiten. So like amai test rating. You would say like lenient test rating. Or you could also say soft or easy. But I'd say lenient is a little more the nuance of amai here. So it's like to be a little lenient when you're evaluating something or criticizing something, like amai. It's like you're not going to go too hard on somebody. And then the third definition under 5, so 5u or 5c, しっかりした心構えができていない. This actually kind of goes with my kakugo suru video that I did a long time ago. It's one of my more popular videos on this channel. So it means you're not fully mentally prepared for something. You're lacking in kakugo. That's basically why this reminds me of kakugo. And the sample sentence they gave is そんな甘い考えでは世間は渡れない. And this is a pretty common like saying or phrase. It means like a loose translation is such amai way of thinking won't get you far in the world, basically. And this again kind of goes into the naive, soft, childish, half-baked, like you're not really thinking things through properly. You know, the world is not that amai, the world is not that easy, the world is not that lenient, the world is not that gracious to you. Okay, so now we're on to definition 6 of amai, and this one really threw me for a loop. I have never heard of this turn of phrase before, and it actually makes amai kind of mean the opposite of what the last definition is. So buckle up. 楽しく心よい様 is sort of their definition here. So to be mirthful and like comfortable, basically. And then their sample sentence, and this is basically like how amai has this meaning. It is a phrase, it's a proverb. So sui mo amai mo kamiwakeru. And it's an idiom. So like literally it kind of means to distinguish between the amai and the sour, like distinguish between the sweet and the sour is like literally what it means, but it's an idiom that actually means to be experienced in the ways of the world. So this isn't exactly like a definition of amai on its own. It's just showing that like in this proverb, in this context, amai can kind of mean worldly, like knowledgeable in the ways of the world, instead of the opposite, like being naive or gullible, kind of like the previous definition was. So I would not go so far as to say, oh, amai can also mean worldly. It's like, well, in this very specific instance, in this idiom, it kind of creates the meaning of being worldly, but only when you combine it with all the other words that are in this proverb, in this idiom. But yeah, that's something that, you know, if you saw it isolated on its own, you wouldn't, and you translated it literally, that would be wrong. So yet another example why you should just look up stuff all the time. So definition number 7. 物事の機能が本来であるべき状態より劣っている様. Like, how do you pronounce that kanji? So basically, the function or the optimal state, like 本来あるべき状態, of a tool has declined. It has just gone bad. And then the sample sentence they give here is このナイフの切れ味は少し甘い. So the nice tip is a little bit amai. Another sample sentence they gave is ネジが甘くなる. So the screws become amai. So in this case, amai means dull or blunt or even neutered, you could kind of say. Or soft. Again, I think soft just sort of, it lends itself pretty well to all of these different nuances, even though it's not always the best translation. But yeah, dull and blunt, I would say. And I must say, I haven't really come across this definition of amai as much in the wild as I have come across like the gullible, naive, or, you know, sweet on a person or go too easy on a person definitions of amai. And this is the very last definition, which again is rather niche, and I had never come across this, probably because of the kind of stuff I translate doesn't really go into this, and I personally am not interested in the stock market, but 株価の動きが鈍く低落気味だ, which is stock prices are sluggish and prone to falling. So amai soba would be like an amai stock market, but in this case it means like sluggish or unreliable. Again, this is specifically to do with the stock market. So I suppose, you know, if you're translating anime or something that's not about the stock market, maybe there will be some pun or some wordplay that's going off of this saying with the stock market. Maybe they'll apply it to stockings instead or something, I don't know. And then you'll need to know this turn of phrase. But otherwise, I've never seen this amai used in this context because I just simply do not translate stuff about the stock market. Okay, so now that all of those definitions are out of the way, I'm going to show you a few real-world examples that I have used in my job of translating. So all of these are from shoujo, actually josemuke material, and that, again, that is kind of where you're going to find amai a lot more because amai often is used in like romantic kind of writing. But I have 4 sentences here, and each one of them I translate amai differently. So good variety. So my first sentence is 世の中ってそう甘くないのね. This is the main character narrating, basically. She's having a little aside. And I translated that as the world just wasn't as gracious as it ought to be. So amai in this case is gracious. Not as much grace given to people as maybe it should. Here is a second example. So for context, the 2 characters just had a passionate kiss. And then the guy says, 悪い、抑えられなかった. And then the girl thinks to herself, narration, これ以上甘い言葉, there it is, 甘い言葉をかけられたら心臓が爆発してしまう. So, 悪い、抑えられなかった, the guy says, sorry, I couldn't stop myself. And then the girl thinks, if he had said anything more romantic, my heart might just explode. So in this case, 甘い言葉, I rendered as saying things romantic. You don't have to literally be like romantic words or sweet words. You know, you can rework things. It's okay. But yeah, in this case, amai is romantic. And you know, it could have been sweet. I could have said if he had said anything sweeter, my heart just might explode. That would work too. It really romantic is more what we're getting at here. Example number 3. The heroine is in peril. Love interest guy comes to save the day. She asks him, why are you here? Why did you come here? And then this is the line from the book. I changed the name of the character so you don't know what IP it's from. Bob はとろけるような甘い笑みを浮かべながら惚れてるからと答えた. So I translated that line of narration as And with a smile sweet enough to melt my heart, Bob said, because I'm in love with you. In this case, I went with actually sweet for amai. You can totally translate amai as sweet. It works just fine. I think because the torokeru yona, like a melting sort of, I liked the sweet imagery there because often you think of sweet sugar crystals melting. And then I added melt my heart. It's really not that much of a stretch. And it flows so much better than just like a sweet melting smile. It's like a sweet melting smile I would envision like, I don't know, bleh, like your smile just like dripping off your face, which is not the vibe. So a sweet, the point is like his smile is making her melt, not like his smile itself is melting. So that's why I went with a smile sweet enough to melt my heart versus just a melting sweet smile. All right, and the final example from my job, final sentence. This is just narrative text. There's no dialogue in it. 傍から見れば甘いのかもしれないけれど、きっとスティーブはとても優秀だったのだろう. So she's sort of pondering here, like, yes, I suppose, da 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 da. So I translated that as, an outsider might think him spoiled, but Steve was surely a gifted child. So in this case, amai was spoiled. Like that goes back to the example earlier on where it's amai o kodomo ni amai oya, I believe was the example in number 4. Yeah, in example 5, kodomo ni amai oya means like parents who spoil their child. They're too soft on their child. They're too doting. So yeah, amai, like it means that you're spoiled basically. So 傍から見れば甘いのかもしれないけど, like, outsider might think him spoiled, but きっと Steve はとても優秀だったのだろう. Like, but Steve was surely a gifted child. Alright, that was my deep dive into amai. What spawned this video was I was going to talk about amaeru, like the verb, like to dote on somebody, to spoil somebody, to, again, it's very nuanced. It can mean a lot of different things. But I thought I really ought to go into amai, kind of the root of that first, because there's so much to explore with just amai. So if I gain another 1,000 subscribers, like every time this channel gains 1,000 subscribers, I make a new video. That's kind of my unofficial rule. If this channel gets to 7,000 subscribers, I suppose I might make the amaeru follow-up video to this. Thanks to all of you for joining and sticking around, even though this channel is mostly an archive channel. If you are new here, go back and watch. I've got like 200 videos or something on here about Japanese. So yeah, I don't upload very frequently anymore, but there's a huge library of resources on this channel you can look through. You can follow me on Blue Sky for occasional musings about the Japanese language, but honestly, I mostly just shitpost and have pictures about my cats and my food that I cook and eat. Also, I am writing a novel series. It is about a neurodivergent queer girl, like, trying to find her place in the world while aliens are doing shit around her. And anyway, yeah, this is that's a pretty accurate description of it. Anyway, if you want to learn more about that or support the work, I've basically turned my Patreon into that. Pretty much all of the proceeds from that Patreon go towards supporting artists and graphic designers and my editor. Everybody working on this project, myself included, is either queer, neurodivergent, or disabled, or all of the above. So if you care about supporting people like that, please consider supporting the project. And the first book shall be published next year in 2026. Anyway, see you in a few months when I get another 1,000 subscribers maybe. Bye!